Usually when you go to a 30th birthday party, there's a certain expectation of how things are going to play out.
Right, you bring a gift, you eat some cake.
Exactly. You share some nostalgic stories, maybe have a drink, but you definitely do not expect the host to, wait until you are putting your coat on to leave.
Just to hand you an eviction notice.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. You do not expect an eviction notice at a birthday party.
It definitely changes the mood of the celebration, to say the least. You show up expecting this nice retrospective, and instead you're handed a mandate for, structural upheaval.
But, when you step into the world of enterprise IT, the rules of the party completely change. And that brings us to today's deep dive.
Yeah, we've got some really interesting material to get into today.
We really do.
Yeah.
We are looking at two very recent posts from the Microsoft Community Hub, along with honestly, the incredibly revealing discussions happening in their comment sections.
The comments are always where the real story is.
Well, absolutely. And our mission today is to help you, the listener, sort of untangle a story that affects basically every major corporation on Earth.
Yeah, and the sources we're pulling from are fascinating, mostly because of the contrast between them.
Right.
The first is this highly nostalgic, celebratory post looking back at 30 years of Microsoft Exchange Server.
Lots of fun trivia in that one.
Yeah, a lot of history. But the second source is a much denser, highly technical roadmap. And it details the upgrade path to their newest iteration, which is called Exchange Server Subscription Edition, or SE.
Right, SE. And to the casual observer, this just looks like, a standard corporate birthday post paired with a routine software update.
Yeah, standard PR stuff.
But we are going to uncover a massive architectural bombshell that Microsoft quietly buried at the very bottom of that anniversary post. And then they snuck it into the fine print of that roadmap update.
It really is a masterclass in hiding a massive paradigm shift in plain sight. They completely buried the lead.
They did. Because today is March 26, 2026. And Exchange Server just turned 30.
Well, maybe.
Right. Maybe. Which I absolutely love, by the way. The anniversary post itself playfully points out that nobody actually knows the real birthday.
Yeah, they say it was released on April 2, 1996. Or, maybe it was March or June.
Even the original creators aren't entirely sure, right?
Exactly. Because the very first public build that shipped back in 1996, it wasn't the final, polished, gold master version.
It was basically a beta.
Yeah, it was just an early build that made its way out into the wild, and it just sort of stuck.
Which is such a perfect metaphor for the early days of software. Just ship it and see what happens.
Literally, you just see what breaks.
Right. But today, we want to help you unpack how a product that fundamentally shaped the way the modern workplace functions is now preparing to, ruthlessly and permanently cut off its own past.
Yeah.
But before we can really grasp why this hidden update is so earth-shattering, we have to establish just how deeply entrenched Exchange is in the corporate world.
Right. We need to travel back to the mid-1990s landscape to really understand the scale of what Exchange accomplished.
Paint us a picture.
So if you were working in an office before Exchange 4.0 came along, email systems were highly fragmented and almost entirely proprietary. You essentially had two very flawed choices.
Pick your poison.
Exactly. You either had expensive host-based mainframe systems that, they refused to integrate with your actual PC applications.
Meaning you had to leave your workflow just to send a message.
Right, open a whole separate terminal.
Yeah.
Or you had LAN-based systems. Those local area network systems played nicely with PCs, but they were infamous for crashing under heavy loads. They just couldn't scale.
So let's picture the pre-Exchange email era, like a highly fragmented regional postal system. Imagine if every single town used completely different stamps, had different shaped delivery trucks.
And different languages for the addresses.
Yes. And half the time, the mail carrier in town A couldn't even read the address format used by town B. It was absolute chaos. If you wanted to send a message to someone on a different system, it required these incredibly complex gateways that just constantly break down.
Yeah. And then Exchange arrives with this completely new concept called integrated groupware.
Which sounds very corporate 90s.
Very 90s buzzword. But it bundled email, calendaring, and most importantly, a centralized directory into one single package. And crucially, this is the big one. It included native support for internet standards like SMTP right out of the gate.
Okay, let's pause on SMTP for a second, because that's an acronym people hear a lot. Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. Why was that such a game changer back then?
Well, SMTP is essentially the universal translator for email.
Okay.
Before that became the standard, getting a Microsoft Mail server to talk to, like a Lotus Note server, was a total nightmare.
Just constant errors, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. So by baking SMTP directly into the architecture, Exchange allowed businesses to communicate over the early internet seamlessly, without needing those clunky third-party translation gateways.
So to stick with the postal analogy, Exchange stepped in and established a unified global postal standard. Suddenly, everyone agreed on how an envelope should be addressed.
Exactly. It standardized the whole process.
And what I loved about the anniversary post is that they included all these great Easter eggs from that 30-year journey. They link to legendary historical moments like the Bilgy bit in AD.
Oh, yeah.
Or the story of Squeaky Lobster, which is just an incredible code name.
A classic.
Or my personal favorite.
Yeah.
The legendary 2.4 gigabyte message that was successfully delivered by Exchange Server 2003.
Yeah, that 2003 message is a perfect example of the system's resilience. I mean, processing a 2.4 gigabyte file today is trivial, right?
Right, you send that over a text message now.
Basically, yeah. But back then, server storage was incredibly expensive, and bandwidth was a fraction of what it is now. For the software architecture to handle a single file of that size without completely crashing the database.
It was a massive engineering feat. It's fun to look back at those milestones. But if we connect this to the bigger picture for you, the listener, the real legacy of Exchange isn't actually about sending emails at all.
No, it's not.
It's about identity.
That is the pivotal concept here. Exchange made your email address and your core network user identity completely inseparable. They became the exact same thing.
Right. If you control the email, you control who the person is on the network.
Exactly. And that philosophy directly influenced the creation of Active Directory.
Which is huge.
It's everything. Active Directory is the system that manages permissions across almost all corporate networks today. It's the direct descendant of the early Exchange Directory service.
Wow.
Fast forward to today, and that architecture is quite literally the backbone of Microsoft 365's compute, routing, and storage. Microsoft calls this underlying foundation the substrate.
So what does this all mean for the current landscape? Because we constantly hear the tech industry shouting, everything is moving to the cloud, on-premises servers are dead, put it all in Azure or AWS.
Yeah, but the sources make a very deliberate point to counter that narrative. Cloud first does not need to mean cloud only.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, think about governments, heavily regulated financial industries, critical infrastructure providers. For them, the physical location of their data is a matter of national security.
Right. They can't just host their nuclear secrets on a public cloud.
Exactly. They care deeply about digital sovereignty. Handing their core communication infrastructure over to a public cloud simply isn't an option. So Exchange Server remains a crucial architectural necessity.
So it's not going anywhere?
No. Microsoft is actually committing to support this new Exchange subscription edition until at least the end of 2035 for those specific use cases.
Okay, so we are dealing with a massive critical system that manages the identity of millions of workers, and it is sticking around for at least another decade.
At least.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and this brings us back to that 30th birthday party we talked about. Towards the bottom of this celebratory post, I hit a very specific, curious quote that completely stopped me in my tracks.
I know the exact quote you're talking about.
It says, "Exchange backward compatibility was both a gift and a burden."
Yeah, a very carefully chosen phrase to introduce what's coming next.
Wait, hold on, though. They're calling backward compatibility a burden. That doesn't make sense to me. I thought the whole reason enterprise companies love Microsoft is because you can install a new system and it doesn't instantly break all your old hardware.
Generally, yes.
Isn't backward compatibility the absolute holy grail for IT departments? Why is that suddenly a bad thing?
So to understand why it has become a burden, we have to look at the mechanics of the historical N-2 coexistence model.
N-2.
Right. For decades, Microsoft allowed 3 major versions of Exchange to run simultaneously in the exact same organization.
Okay, let's unpack N-2 for a second. That means the current version minus the 2 previous versions. So you could have a corporate network running Exchange 2013, Exchange 2016, and Exchange 2019 servers all talking to each other at the same time.
Exactly, that was the standard. And as you mentioned, it was a massive gift because it made migrations relatively painless. IT departments didn't have to flip a switch over the weekend and pray the company could still send emails on Monday.
That's the dream, right? No downtime.
Right. They could slowly migrate users from the 2013 server to the 2019 server over months or, honestly, sometimes even years.
So what changed? Why penalize that flexibility now?
Because the threat model has completely changed since 1996. Today, threat actors, ransomware gangs, state-sponsored hackers, they aggressively target organizational email.
It's the frontier.
It is the #1 vector for corporate breaches. And keeping a 10-year-old architecture alive, just so older versions can play nice with the brand new versions, it severely limits the security improvements Microsoft can actually implement.
How does it limit them? Exactly. If the new server is secure, why does the old one matter?
Well, think about it like a secure conversation. If you have a brand new 2026 server that wants to use highly advanced modern encryption to route a message, but it has to hand that message off to a legacy 2013 server down the hall.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, the 2026 server can't use its shiny new encryption. It has to downgrade its security protocols to a language the 2013 server can understand.
Oh, wow. So your entire multi-million-dollar corporate network is literally only as secure as the oldest, weakest server sitting forgotten in a branch office closet.
That is the fundamental architectural flaw. Every new security feature has to be dumbed down or architected around the limitations of a server built a decade ago.
That's terrifying.
It slows down modernization and architectural cleanup to a crawl. The gift of flexibility became a massive, untenable security liability.
Which leads us to the buried bombshell. Because of this security burden, Microsoft has decided to drop the hammer. And they hid the execution orders right in the fine print of their roadmap update for the new Exchange Subscription Edition.
Yeah. Let me walk you through the timeline Microsoft just laid out because it represents a monumental shift in how enterprise IT upgrades are going to be handled going forward. You can see the wall rapidly approaching.
Okay, lay it out for us.
First, Exchange 2013 is already completely blocked. You cannot introduce a new server if 2013 is anywhere in your environment.
Gone. Dust.
Next, we look at Exchange 2016 and Exchange 2019. Both of these versions reached their end of support just a few months ago on October 14th, 2025.
Wait, so they are officially unsupported right now as we speak?
Yes, right now. Now, Microsoft is releasing the initial version of the new Software Exchange SE release to manufacturing, or RTM, and then shortly after, Cumulative Update 1.
Okay.
These two initial releases still allow some coexistence. You can technically still have 2016 or 2019 running while you install SC RTM, though doing so with 2016 is highly unsupported and honestly risky.
It sounds like a temporary grace period.
It is the final grace period, because then comes the hard wall, Exchange SE Cumulative Update 2, CU2. It's releasing in the second half of 2026. And the setup program for CU2 has a new mandate. When you run it, it will run a scan across your entire global organization.
Okay.
If it detects even a single instance of Exchange 2013, 2016, or 2019 anywhere on your network, the installation will hard stop.
Hard stop.
It will completely block you from proceeding.
So you cannot install the new security update unless you have completely eradicated every trace of previous versions from your entire organization.
You have to decommission and remove them down to the registry level. The N-2 model is officially permanently dead.
That is, honestly, it's kind of terrifying. If you're an IT admin managing a sprawling hospital network or, a university with dozens of satellite campuses, finding and decommissioning every old server is a massive forensic operation.
Oh, yeah, it's a huge undertaking. Microsoft is enforcing a strictly single major version environment.
Just one version everywhere.
Yes. It forces a level of environmental hygiene that a lot of large organizations simply aren't used to maintaining. It is a forced evolution to secure the ecosystem.
Okay, so if coexistence is being blocked by this impending CU2 wall in late 2026, how do organizations actually survive this transition? How do they get from their messy multi-version reality today to this pristine single-version SE environment?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because anyone who has worked in enterprise IT knows that the reality is always much messier than a simple click next to update wizard.
It is significantly messier. And the sources outline two distinct paths to cross that finish line. The traditional path is called a legacy upgrade,
which is the old school tried and true method. You build a brand new server with the new software on fresh hardware, you plug it in next to the old one, and you slowly move all the mailboxes over one by one.
Exactly.
And only when everyone is moved do you turn off the old server.
Right. It is a slow, methodical process, but it is safe because you always have the old server to fall back on. And importantly, if your company is still running Exchange 2016, a legacy upgrade to Exchange 2019 is your only supported path forward right now. You have to take that stepping stone first.
But Microsoft introduced a new method to speed things up, right? The in-place upgrade.
Yes. If and only if you are already running Exchange 2019 on its latest cumulative updates, so CU14 or CU15, you can perform an in-place upgrade directly to Exchange SE.
Just right on top of it.
Yeah. The official documentation claims it is practically identical to just installing a regular routine software update.
I have to be honest, an in-place upgrade of a live corporate email server sounds like an incredibly dangerous proposition.
Yeah.
To me, that sounds like completely gutting and remodeling a restaurant's kitchen while still trying to serve a Friday night dinner rush.
That is a very accurate analogy.
You are overwriting the foundational code that routes messages while those messages are actively in transit. Does this actually work smoothly in the real world?
In theory, Microsoft says yes. In practice, well, the comment sections of these Microsoft posts provide a vital reality check. We have IT professionals down in the trenches reporting what actually happens when they attempt this kitchen remodel during dinner service.
And I'm guessing it is not always a smooth ride.
Far from it. Let's look at a user named Damon Viller. He attempted an in-place upgrade from Exchange 2019 to the new subscription edition.
Okay.
The setup wizard finished and proudly told him the operation completed successfully.
Famous last words in IT. Completed successfully.
Right. But immediately after he clicked finish, his Exchange services completely refused to start. His event logs were flooded with warnings and critical errors. The specific failure point was icy Internet Information Services.
Let's clarify what ISIS does in this context, because people might wonder why an email server needs a web server component.
Sure. ISIS is the engine that handles all web-based traffic for Exchange. It's what allows Outlook on the web to function, it's what lets your mobile phone sync your calendar, and it handles the modern authentication protocols.
This is pretty important then.
Very. And in Damon's case, ISA completely broke because a critical module called kerboff.dll simply failed to load during the upgrade.
Oh, man. So let's escalate the stakes of what that actually means.
Right.
Imagine it's Monday morning. 10,000 employees open their laptops to check their email or pull out their phones to see their next meeting location. And the server essentially says, I don't know who any of you are.
Yep.
The entire company is paralyzed because one tiny authentication file failed to copy properly during an upgrade.
That is the exact reality Damon was facing. And another community user had to reply with a multi-step manual recovery process, explaining that the upgrade likely failed to copy or register critical files properly in the background.
So how do you fix it?
Damon had to manually extract missing files from the installation media, re-register the IS modules through the command line, and run the Exchange setup tool in a special recovery mode just to get the company back online.
That is not a click-next experience. That is open-heart surgery on a live patient.
And the friction isn't just caused by the Exchange software itself. The underlying operating system and the virtual environment can betray you during these migrations as well.
There are just so many moving parts.
Exactly. Another user, Daniel, reported a nightmare scenario involving a routine Windows update, KB5065426.
What went wrong there?
Daniel was in the middle of a migration, spinning up new virtual machines on VMware to act as his new servers. And the Windows update caused a silent failure in a crucial Windows tool called sysprep.
What does sysprep do?
Well, when you build a template for a server and want to copy it to make, say, 5 more servers, sysprep is the tool that strips away the original server's unique identity. That way, each new copy gets its own fresh identity.
Makes sense.
In the Windows world, this identity is called a system identifier, or SID. Windows relies on SIDs, not server names, to know who owns what file and who has permission to do what. But because sysprep failed silently, the new virtual machines Daniel created weren't generating unique SIDs.
Oh no, so he cloned the servers, but they all kept the exact same internal identity.
Yes. He had multiple servers walking around the corporate network wearing the exact same ID badge.
That's bad.
It's very bad. In an Active Directory environment, which demands strict unique identity management, duplicate SIDs cause catastrophic confusion. The network literally has an identity crisis.
So Microsoft is forcing you to navigate this minefield and upgrade to this new subscription edition by 2026. But the word subscription is the real catch here, isn't it?
It really is.
Because they aren't just forcing you to change your server architecture. They are fundamentally changing how you have to pay for it.
That is a critical shift, and it's the final piece of the puzzle you need to understand. Licensing has been completely overhauled. To legally run Exchange SE, you now have two primary options, and both require an ongoing financial commitment.
The days of buying a software disk and owning it forever are officially over.
Long gone.
So what are the two options for paying the toll?
Option one is entirely cloud-based licensing. You need Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 cloud subscription licenses for every single user that touches the on-premises server.
Which, to be clear, are the premium, top-tier, most expensive cloud licenses Microsoft offers.
They are. Option two is for organizations that want to stick to the traditional licensing model, buying a server license for the machine and client access licenses, or CALs, for the users.
Right, a CAL is essentially the legal ticket a user needs to touch the server.
Exactly. But under the new SE rules, buying the server and the CLs is no longer enough. You must also purchase and maintain active software assurance.
And software assurance is essentially an enterprise maintenance subscription, right? You pay a percentage of the software cost every year to guarantee you get support and future updates.
Right.
So what happens if a company decides to stop paying that maintenance fee? Do they lose the rights to the software? Does the server just shut down?
The documentation clarifies that there isn't like a periodic online call home check that will suddenly turn off your server if you miss a payment. However, without an active software assurance subscription, you are legally out of compliance.
Which is bad enough for an enterprise.
Sure, but more importantly, from a technical standpoint, you will immediately lose access to any future updates, including critical security patches.
Which, as we established earlier with the changing threat model, is basically a death sentence for an email server in 2026.
It is a massive vulnerability. And to highlight just how strict Microsoft is being about this subscription model, consider the free hybrid license.
What's that?
Historically, if a company moved all their actual mailboxes to the cloud but just needed one small on-premises Exchange server to manage their local user identities, Microsoft gave you the license for that server for free. It was a nice perk to encourage cloud adoption.
So what happens to that free server now?
Under the new subscription edition rules, while the hybrid license itself is technically still free to obtain, you must have software assurance or a qualifying cloud subscription just to download the updates for it.
Wow. There's no such thing as a free lunch anymore.
Exactly. You are transitioning from a world where you purchased and owned software to a world where you are effectively renting compliance.
It's all about ensuring that every single server connected to the global ecosystem is actively maintained, funded, and patched. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? I mean, even if you aren't an IT admin currently sweating over a broken kerbauth.dl file on a server rack or trying to untangle duplicate SIDs, this deep dive is really a masterclass in systems thinking and technological evolution.
It really is.
It shows that even a giant like Microsoft, a company that practically built its multi-billion-dollar empire on the promise of backward compatibility, eventually reaches a breaking point. They eventually have to amputate their own legacy just to survive the modern security landscape.
And that amputation is the SECU2 blockade. By the second half of 2026, they are forcing the entire enterprise world to step over the line into a single version, continuously patched, subscription-based future.
Ready or not?
Ready or not.
Which brings us back to that 30th birthday party we talked about at the beginning. The cake has been eaten, the confetti's on the floor, but the date on the invitation was a little murky. Was the actual launch in March? Was it April? Nobody really knows exactly when the pass started.
But the future. The future has a very hard, undeniable, and heavily enforced deadline.
And it leaves you with a final thought to mull over. If Microsoft is finally willing to kill 30 years of beloved backward compatibility to secure the future of enterprise communication, what other legacy systems in our digital lives are quietly running on borrowed time?
That's a great question.
Think about the banking sector running on decades-old mainframes. Think about fragmented healthcare records. What other hidden critical architectures out there are just waiting for their own CU2 blockade?
It's an important question to ask as we move into this new era of enforced modernization. The eviction notices for legacy systems are coming. It's just a matter of when.